Technology reshapes everything. AI, cloud systems, cybersecurity, the future of work. We don't guess here. Wealth building, money psychology, financial freedom. The conversations they don't want you having. Engineered with ruthless accuracy. Every word verified, every claim backed. Modern love, intimacy, dating dynamics, real human connection in a disconnected world. Truth about attraction, truth about belonging. 4 pillars. Endless conversations, research-driven, LM-enhanced, human-validated, no fluff, no filler, just truth. We cut through the noise, research-driven conversations, truth delivered hard, spirituality, discipline, mindset, becoming who you're meant to be, endless conversations, no filler, stay curious. Welcome to the Robert Joodat Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Robert Joodat Podcast, available on Spotify and all other major platforms.
Imagine for a second that your deepest anxiety or like your heaviest depression or even your most unbearable grief wasn't just some glitch in your brain.
Right, like it wasn't a mistake.
Exactly. What if it was actually a cosmic conspiracy designed specifically to help you?
It's a pretty wild thought.
It is.
Right.
And that's the radical, uncomfortable, and honestly fascinating premise we are doing a deep dive into today. We're exploring an incredible set of show notes from episode 183 of The Gravity Show.
Which is also known as Inner Space, I think. Deep, meaningful conversations with Brett Kaufman.
Yeah, exactly. Inner Space. And his guest for this conversation is Dr. Dan Engel. We are looking really closely at this exact intersection where, like, clinical psychiatry just fully collides with expansive spirituality.
It's a space that fundamentally challenges our default reactions to pain, you know?
Oh, it absolutely does. But before we really go down this rabbit hole, I do need to set a quick boundary right up front.
Yeah, that's the Norton here.
The source material we're unpacking, it touches on some highly sensitive mental health topics, including suicide. So we need to echo the source's disclaimer that everything we're discussing today is strictly for informational purposes.
Right, definitely not medical advice.
Exactly. It is not a substitute for professional medical recommendation, diagnosis, or treatment. Just want to make sure you, the listener, know that up front.
Which is an essential boundary, honestly, because Dr. Engel and Brett Kaufman are navigating some very heavy, uncharted waters in this conversation, and, well, it requires real care.
Yeah, real care. So with that in place, I want to jump straight into the inciting incident for today's deep dive. I want to read you this quote from Dr. Dan Engel that was highlighted in the text because it literally stops you in your tracks.
Let's hear it.
Okay? He says, "If you thought the universe was conspiring in your favor before, then why would this be any different? Just because you don't want this to happen and it's uncomfortable, how do you know this isn't also part of that conspiracy on your behalf?"
Wow. That's such a powerful disruption to how we normally process distress.
It really is.
Usually when we experience emotional pain, our immediate biological and psychological reaction is just to reject it. Like we view it as an error code.
Right, like something is broken.
Exactly. Something went wrong, something broke, and we just want to eradicate the symptoms so we can get back to normal. But Dr. Engel is introducing this concept of a positive cosmic conspiracy to, inject a clinical symptom with profound spiritual meaning.
I have to stop you there, though, because, framing severe psychiatric distress as a positive conspiracy, that sounds dangerously close to toxic positivity, doesn't it?
I can see how it sounds like that, yeah.
Like, if someone is in the middle of the debilitating depressive episode or dealing with extreme trauma, telling them, the universe is doing this for you, that feels incredibly dismissive. How does he avoid falling into that trap?
Well, that's the vital distinction to make right away. Toxic positivity is really about avoidance, right? It's like slapping a happy sticker over a gaping wound and just pretending it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, just smiling through the pain.
Right. What Dr. Engel is advocating for is actually the opposite. It's a holistic approach that demands you face the pain directly, but he changes the lens through which you view it.
Okay.
He isn't saying the pain isn't real or horrific. He's asking, now that this pain is here, how can we extract utility from it?
Okay, let's unpack this because that brings us directly to a framework mentioned in the source notes that helps people actually do this. They're called the silos of meaning.
Ah, yes, the silos.
Yeah, and the notes list 3 distinct silos. There's love, purpose, and suffering. And the implication is that literally every human experience gets sorted into one of these massive containers.
Right.
I was trying to figure out how to make this tangible for you, the listener, and I kept coming back to, physical exercise.
Oh, I like where this is going. Walk us through it.
So think about the biological mechanism of lifting heavy weights. You are literally causing micro tears in your muscle fibers. Your body is producing lactic acid. It burns.
It's objectively uncomfortable.
Exactly. If you were just, say, sitting on your couch watching TV, and suddenly your muscles started tearing and burning for no apparent reason, you would panic.
You'd probably rush to the hospital.
You would. Because in a vacuum, that unexplainable pain goes straight into the suffering silo.
Right, because the context is totally missing. Your brain interprets uncontextualized pain as a lethal threat. It triggers this massive stress response.
Exactly. But when you walk into a gym, you take that exact same physical sensation, the exact same biological tearing, and you voluntarily place it into the purpose silo.
Because you're trying to get stronger.
Yes. Suddenly that suffering isn't a random attack anymore. It becomes a positive conspiracy for your health. Your brain completely changes this relationship to the discomfort. You actually welcome the burn.
That's a great analogy.
Right. So if we apply that to psychiatric distress, if we can take emotional trauma and somehow move it from the suffering silo into the purpose silo, it fundamentally alters the nature of the pain.
And this is exactly the mechanism Dr. Engel is leveraging here. Because in a strictly clinical psychiatric setting, psychological pain is often treated like that unexplained muscle tearing on the couch.
Just a symptom to be fixed.
Exactly. It's just a cluster of symptoms on a diagnostic chart to be numbed or removed. But by applying these silos of meaning, you aren't just treating a symptom, you are giving the individual the scaffolding to contextualize their emotional pain.
Making it useful.
Right. You're helping them see the mental anguish as a necessary, albeit brutal, step toward psychological or spiritual hypertrophy, to use your gym analogy.
So it shifts you from being a helpless victim of a broken brain to being an active participant in a growth process. But, moving trauma from the suffering silo to the purpose silo, that is so much easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you actually do that when your mind is in a really dark place? And the notes show that Dr. Engel points to a very specific lineage of psychologists and thinkers to provide the roadmap for this.
Yeah, and if you want to understand how this field has evolved to embrace both the hard clinical science and the expansive spiritual concepts, you have to look really closely at the reading list provided in these show notes.
It's quite a list.
It really is. It's not just a random collection of books. It is a very deliberate progression.
Let's walk through the connective tissue here, because the show notes explicitly mention the influence of key figures in psychotherapy. And the range of this list is just staggering. It starts incredibly grounded.
Yeah, the first book is Alice Miller's The Drama of the Gifted Child.
Right.
And this is where the work really has to begin. Alice Miller is foundational in understanding childhood trauma. Her work explores how deeply our early emotional wounds, often, the ways we were forced to adapt to our parents' needs instead of our own, how they shape our adult neuroses.
It's very traditional.
Very. It's entirely grounded in traditional psychoanalysis because you cannot just skip straight to spiritual enlightenment, right? You first have to do the painful psychological groundwork of uncovering the unconscious wounds of this lifetime.
So you have to look at the reality of the muscle tear before you can assign it a purpose.
Yeah.
Which leads perfectly into the second book on the list, which is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Right, and Frankl is the masterclass in meaning making. He was a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, and he developed a school of thought called logotherapy.
Logotherapy, right?
Yeah, and he observed that in the concentration camps, the prisoners who survived weren't necessarily the most physically fit. They were the ones who could find a sliver of meaning in their horrific suffering.
Wow.
If they had a purpose, whether it was a loved one waiting for them or like a book they still needed to write, that meaning quite literally rewired their survival instincts. It gave them the psychological endurance to withstand the unimaginable.
Okay, so Miller helps you uncover the trauma, and Frankl teaches you the mechanism of finding purpose within it. Those two feel very much within the realm of accepted, widely studied psychology.
Definitely.
But here's where I start to get a little lost and where I actually want to challenge this list, because the notes suddenly take a hard esoteric turn.
They certainly do.
Right, because the next three books are Brian Weiss's Many Lives, Many Masters, Michael Newton's Journey of Souls, and Stanislav Grof's The Way of the Psychonaut.
It's quite a leap.
We are going from grounded childhood trauma and Holocaust survival to past life regression, the journey of immortal souls between physical bodies, and exploring altered states of consciousness.
Yeah.
How do we reconcile this? Like, is there a risk here of losing the hard science of psychiatry when we drift into these really mystical realms?
It looks like a massive leap, I agree, but if you look at the mechanics of healing, it actually makes perfect sense.
Okay, how so?
Think about it this way. Traditional clinical therapy, the Alice Miller, and even the Viktor Frankl approaches, they can get you to a place of high functionality. But eventually, many people hit an existential wall.
An existential wall.
Yeah. What happens if your trauma is so profound or your sense of emptiness is just so vast that the standard psychological frameworks just aren't big enough to hold it?
Oh, I see. Meaning, if a trauma is so horrific that the thought, this having for absolutely no reason, if that thought just shatters a person's psyche, they need a bigger container to hold that pain.
Exactly. When people start asking the biggest existential questions like, why am I here? What is the nature of consciousness? The standard clinical model runs out of answers.
That makes sense.
And that is where the work of Brian Weiss and Michael Newton comes in. They offer frameworks for understanding the soul's journey across multiple lifetimes.
Okay.
Now, whether you view their work as literal empirical truth or you view it as an incredibly powerful psychological metaphor, the mechanism works exactly the same.
It provides a bigger container.
Yes, it provides a cosmic-level purpose silo. If you can view your current, seemingly unbearable trauma as a challenge your soul specifically chose to accelerate its own evolution, well, the pain suddenly has utility.
That makes total sense. So it's not about abandoning science. It's about acknowledging that science might only be equipped to carry you through the first few miles of a much longer existential marathon.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the final book on the list. Stanislav Grof's The Way of the Psychonaut.
Grof is an absolute titan in this field. He mapped territories of the mind that go far beyond our standard biographical trauma, specifically touching on what he called the perinatal and the transpersonal realms.
Wait, perinatal and transpersonal. Let's break that down for a second.
Right.
Are we talking about trauma from before we were even born and experiences outside our own ego?
Precisely. Let's look at the mechanism here. Perinatal refers to the trauma of the birth process itself.
Okay.
Grof theorized that the physical compression, the biological stress, and the chemical changes of being born, that they leave a profound imprint on our psyche before we even have language.
Wow, okay, and transpersonal.
Transpersonal goes even further. These are experiences where the boundary of your individual ego completely dissolves. You might experience the collective unconscious, ancestral memories, or just a sense of total unity with the universe.
So how do you even access that?
Well, Grof pioneered the use of breathwork and early psychedelic research to safely access these states.
And that mention of psychonauts and dissolving the ego, that brings us right to the actual treatments mentioned in the source notes. Because the notes aren't just theoretical here.
Right.
They explicitly state that the episode covers the 3 primary motivations for medicine work. Now, the notes don't actually list what those 3 motivations are, but they provide massive contextual clues.
They do.
So let's be totally clear for the listener here. When the notes refer to medicine work combined with terms like psychonauts, we are explicitly talking about the frontier of psychedelic therapy and plant medicine, right? Like things like psilocybin or ayahuasca.
Yes, absolutely. Medicine work is the vernacular used in these holistic circles to describe the intentional therapeutic use of compounds that induce non-ordinary states of consciousness. It's essentially the practical application of Grof's theories.
Okay, and the notes highlight Dr. Engel's involvement in this space through his nonprofit organization, Thank You Life, and his integration platform, Full Spectrum Medicine.
Right, which are very telling names.
Yeah, the names alone tell you a lot. Thank You Life circles right back to that cosmic reframe of gratitude we started with. And Full Spectrum Medicine implies treating the whole person, mind, body, and spirit.
Exactly.
But this brings me to a very stark disclaimer sitting at the very bottom of the show notes.
Ah, the legal boundary.
Right. It states that discussing this is not an endorsement of use, given the complexity inherent in these medicines and the current variable widespread illegality of their usage.
Yeah, that's a big hurdle.
So how does a listener actually navigate this? I mean, the clinical data showing how effective these medicines are for severe PTSD and depression is becoming undeniable. The science is proving the mystics right, but the law and the traditional medical establishment are still lagging way behind. How do you pursue this healing when the tools are wrapped in red tape?
It's really the defining tension of this emerging field. We are in a massive transitional period right now because this medicine work is legally variable and psychologically incredibly complex.
And dissolving the ego sounds intense.
Right. Dissolving the ego to face transpersonal trauma is not a casual weekend activity. You cannot just approach it like taking an aspirin, which is why I really want to draw your attention back to one crucial grounding mechanism hidden in the bullet points of the show notes.
Oh, which one?
The notes emphasize gratitude and brotherhood in healing journeys.
Brotherhood. Why brotherhood? Like, why is that specific word there?
Because of the biology of integration. When you engage in this kind of medicine work, your brain enters a state of high neuroplasticity. You are deconstructing your ego and facing profound, often chaotic insights.
Okay, so things are very fluid in the brain.
Exactly. And when the medicine wears off and you return to ordinary consciousness, your brain is still highly suggestible. If you don't have a community, a brotherhood, or an integration platform like full spectrum medicine to help you process what you just saw, it just remains a crazy destabilizing experience.
Oh, I see. You need a tether. Like if you were going to be a psychonaut exploring the far reaches of your own consciousness, you need mission control back on Earth to help you land the ship.
Exactly. The community acts as the scaffolding while the concrete dries on your new neural pathways. The establishment might not provide the framework for this safety net yet, so the community has to provide it.
That makes total sense.
Brotherhood and structured integration are the actual mechanisms of how you take the raw, terrifying insights from an altered state and successfully apply them to the purpose silo in your everyday life.
That is profound. And it all connects right back to the beginning. The community is what helps you actually execute that cosmic reframe.
It is the practical application of the spiritual theory, yeah.
Wow. This has been an incredibly rich journey through a single set of show notes. I mean, we started with a radical challenge to our default settings, the idea that the universe might be conspiring in our favor, even through our deepest pain.
Yeah, turning suffering into purpose.
Right. We explore the mechanics of the silos of meaning, using the biology of the gym to understand how assigning a purpose completely alters our experience of suffering.
And we traced the evolution of healing.
We did. We mapped how a person has to start with the grounded psychological heavy lifting of facing childhood trauma with Alice Miller and finding meaning with Viktor Frankl.
The foundations.
Right. And then we explored how, when the standard models hit that existential wall you mentioned, the soul-level frameworks of Brian Weiss, Michael Newton, and Stanislav Grof provide the expansive container needed to hold cosmic-level meaning.
And finally, we looked at the absolute necessity of community, integration, and brotherhood when navigating the complex, highly effective, but legally tangled frontier of modern psychedelic medicine work.
The amazing thing is, even if you never read a book about past lives, and even if you never go anywhere near alternative medicine work, you can take Dr. Engel's fundamental framing and apply it to the mechanics of your own life today.
And on that note, we want to leave you with a final thought, a little something to mull over on your own that builds on everything we've unpacked today.
What should they be thinking about?
Look at those three silos of meaning one more time: love, purpose, and suffering. I want you to identify your current biggest life challenge, the thing that is causing you the most friction or distress right now.
Everyone has one.
Exactly. And by default, your brain has almost certainly categorized it squarely in the suffering silo. But leaning into Dr. Engel's cosmic conspiracy theory, what would happen if you actively force that exact same challenge into a different container?
Oh.
How might viewing that specific pain through the lens of the purpose silo completely rewrite the biological and psychological story you were telling yourself today? If the universe actually is conspiring on your behalf, what is this pain trying to help you build?
The conspiracy is real. The only question is, how are you going to categorize it? Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Robert Joodat Podcast. Subscribe to be notified of the upcoming episodes. Available on Spotify and all other major platforms.